Okay, it's time for the very first compound interactive. What you'll do is get in Discovery Education. It'll take a second to load in. You'll need to click on this on your Google Classroom. Now, as this is loading, we're going to be referring to this section right here, the Compounds Interactive. We're going to do the first one together. I'm going to model exactly what should go in which place. So you don't have to write anything while I'm talking. Just pay attention and in your head think about where you would be placing the information. Then, when I'm finished, we'll pause it and you'll have the opportunity to choose one of the compounds to make your own chart. And here we go. So when it takes you in, it should take you into a screen that looks just like this. You may need to use your Google login to get there. So let's start with the introduction. When we use any of these Discovery Education lab activities, it's very important that you read everything. If you don't want to read it, you can click the listen icon, but I'll go ahead and read it. Compounds are different from the elements that make them. Salt is a compound we use in our food. Do you know what elements make up a molecule of salt? Let's explore the properties of compounds and the elements that make them. We're going to click Continue. Now, there's 3 substances that you can explore. We're going to look at water together, and after that, you will choose either salt or carbon dioxide to fill out your chart. Remember, you're not filling out the chart right now. You're just thinking and listening. So I selected water, and we're going to click on the glass of water to see what it's made up of. I'm sure it's no surprise that water is made up of hydrogen and oxygen atoms, H2O. Let's read down here. Water is made up of 2 elements, oxygen and hydrogen. A substance made up of 2 or more elements is known as a compound. But is water the same as oxygen and hydrogen? Let's find out. So you're going to click on Next. Now, this is where, if you were actually writing this down, you would write which 2 elements make up water. Your first element would be oxygen. Your second element would be hydrogen. You're going to look for properties and uses of oxygen and hydrogen. So, as we look at oxygen, it's separated off into properties and uses. So let's read properties. Oxygen is a gas. It's colorless and odorless. Though oxygen itself does not burn, it helps the burning of other substances. That's what you would put in properties. You're welcome to bullet point it, number it. Just try to have at least 2 reasons. Uses. People and animals need oxygen to breathe. Oxygen tanks are used in hospitals and for scuba diving. So that's what you would be filling out in that first column. After you have that done, we're going to take a look at hydrogen. Properties of hydrogen. Hydrogen is also a gas like oxygen. It does not have any color or odor. When it's set on fire, hydrogen burns violently. Uses. Hydrogen is used to make rocket fuel. So, if you look here, it asks for 2 uses. I know with hydrogen there was only 1, so if this is the case with the one that you choose, that's fine. Just write down as much as you can. Okay, let's take a look at the compound. When you take oxygen and hydrogen and you chemically combine them, you get something completely different. If you remember, oxygen and hydrogen were both gases. Water is a liquid. It's colorless and odorless. Water does not burn, but it helps in putting out fires. So again, very, very different than the properties of oxygen and the properties of hydrogen. Uses. All living things need water to live. Water is used to irrigate farms. Fish live in water. So you would put the new substance, water, properties here, and what it's used for right here. So now it's your turn to click on Choose Another Compound, and you will do either common salt or carbon dioxide. So go ahead and pause it. Use your computer to fill this out for water or carbon dioxide. Don't forget to label which one you did. Now, when you're finished, raise your hand and ask Ms. Tuckash to come over and check it to make sure you're on the right track before you continue. Okay, so since we finished our first interactive, we're going to go ahead and talk about where elements are found at. Elements are very, very rarely found in their pure form in nature. Most of the time, they're found bonded together in compounds. So let's go ahead and come up with an actual definition for your notes. At this point, you should be starting right here. What is a compound? And following along. So a compound, as you should know by now, it's two or more elements that are chemically combined. For example, we have salt, NaCl. Now, remember when I told you how important it was to be able to understand that the first letter of a symbol is capital, the second letter is lowercase. That lets us know that the A belongs to the N. So this whole entire symbol, Na, is sodium. The C, capital C, and the lowercase l tell us that these go together. So in the compound salt, there is sodium, and Cl is chlorine. Hopefully you've been studying your 30 elements to know, and this should come pretty quickly for you at this point. Okay, if you take a look at water, we know that water has H, is capital, and the O is capital. So we know that they're two separate elements. H, hydrogen, O for oxygen. When hydrogen and oxygen chemically combine, we get something new, a compound. The same with carbon dioxide. C is capital, O is capital. That tells us that C stands for carbon, O stands for oxygen. Remember, this is why it is so important to use your upper and lowercase letters when you're doing this. Because if you had uppercase C, lowercase o, that would be cobalt. And we're not talking about cobalt. Okay, let's take a quick second and erase that. I think maybe I got that. Okay. So when elements combine to make a compound, the new substance has properties different from the original. So it might be something like a new color, a new odor, a new texture, a new state of matter, okay? So how do these elements combine together? Well, it gets pretty complicated, and that's some stuff that you'll go into in high school chemistry. But right now, you need to know that there's something called a chemical bond. It's a force, and it's a force that holds atoms together. So these chemical bonds are what take the hydrogen and the oxygen, bond them together, so we have water. Okay, atoms bond to each other. Sometimes they share electrons. Sometimes the electrons actually move from one atom to another. If you look here at the sodium, you have one sodium atom, one chlorine atom, and when the electrons from the sodium atom moves over to the chlorine atom, they chemically combine to form a compound, NaCl. All right, last word that we're going to be talking about today is molecules. A molecule is one or more atoms that are bonded together. They're called a molecule. So a molecule is the smallest part of a compound that keeps the same properties of a compound. For example, here we have a water molecule, 2 hydrogens and an oxygen, H2O. These are chemically bonded together to form a molecule. This water molecule has all the same properties that you would find in a swimming pool full of water. It's the smallest part of the compound that has the same properties. Here's a carbon dioxide. Here's your carbon atom. Here's your 2 oxygen atoms. When they chemically bond together, this molecule here has all of the same properties as a room full of carbon dioxide. Okay, this is the really useful stuff that you're going to really need to pay attention to. You'll have lots of examples to do later. It's easy, just pay attention. Chemical formulas are kind of like a recipe. A chemical formula tells you what elements you need and how many atoms the compound contains. If you had a recipe, it would tell you what ingredients you need and how many you need to have for each.